artificial intelligence is not going to replace a human. So we're going to create artificial intelligence that will unleash the power of human creativity and imagination.
The simplest way I would explain GT SOPHY is an AI agent that learned to drive by itself at a very competitive level and is able to compete with the best drivers in the world.
We wanted to build a technology that enabled the AI agent to be able to understand, react, and then make at least the proper reactions in the real time in a dynamic and complex environment.
This is a collaboration between Sony AI, Polyphony Digital as a game development studio, and also Sony Interactive Entertainment.
There are many racing games where the physics is half done, but in Gran Turismo, that racing sensation that the players get, that's really at the core of the game. Kazunori-san, who's the CEO of PDI, he really lives racing, and he wants to capture the dynamics and the physics of that sport in the game.
このなんか車文化、車という存在をもう丸ごとビデオゲームの中に再現したいなと思ったんですね。
The realism of Gran Turismo comes from the detail that we put into the game. All the details about the engine, the tires, the suspension, the tracks, the car model.
Because of the realism of the game, it is actually very difficult to program agents. We started around a year and a half ago by bringing on new people and a new team, essentially, that would help us solve that specific challenge that we're engaging in with GT SOPHY.
When you start projects like this, you always underestimate how hard they're going to be.
Oh, the early days of SOPHY were frustrating.
So we had these bi-weekly tests with the guys from Sony AI, and they would bring a new version. The first version that I got to see of SOPHY, she was fast, actually quite fast, but she couldn't run on a straight line. I can beat her 100 times over 100 times.
The SOPHY agent is trained through a technique called reinforcement learning. SOPHY begins her life as an agent, tabula rasa, a blank slate. She gets inputs from the game about, hey, here's how fast you're going, here's which way the wheels are pointed, here's the curvature of the track, and she gets some feedback as to whether what she's doing is good or bad.
We spent a lot of time trying to figure out what things we needed to change in order to get that superhuman performance.
The next time they came to us, she was extremely fast. And the next time, she was even faster, and faster, and faster. Okay, I can't beat this. And then we had to bring the big guns.
So we had one big race day in July, and we learned a lot from this.
By the time we came to July 2nd, it was super competitive. So the GT SOPHY agents are one agent but different color combinations competing against the 4 top human drivers across 3 different tracks and car combinations. One of the drivers that participated in the race with us, Takuma Miyazono, he is the top driver out of the 14 million GT sports drivers in the world.
The first race was on a track called Dragon Trail Seaside, and there's a really sharp corner towards the end that SOPHY takes in a way that's just really amazing. It drifts across the curbs as it prepares to enter this 180-degree turn in a way that when you watch it, you're like, how does it stay in control of the car with that maneuver? In a time trial setting, SOPHY is better than the best humans by anywhere from a half second to a second and a half.
It did really well in the time trial scenarios, but it didn't do so well in the competitive racing.
So the results were that GT SOPHY came in first place in 2 out of 3 races. Unfortunately, though, the total points that SOPHY scored meant actually that the human drivers took the team score away.
I think we all underestimated how hard it would be to get the sportsmanship side of it right. and learn to do that without being overly aggressive or overly timid in the face of competitors. That was a significant challenge to try to figure out what kinds of rewards to give it for these kind of in-game incidents.
We already had a great result on the first race day, but you know, there we can always do better.
In order to make Sophie learn, she duplicates herself, and for each of her, play a different Gran Turismo in different situations. We really need a lot of computation power for training.
For the SOPHY GT project, what we provided was essentially that infrastructure that's really needed to be able to train that super AI to get to that world-class ability to beat the best human players in the world.
You make an update to your model, you run it for like millions of simulations and see how they behave, and then you change a bit, and then you do this a lot of times.
In the end, it becomes an expert, a lot like humans become experts. Drives for like 10,000 hours, like a human has to practice the skill until they become proficient at it.
On race day 2, we wanted to win all out. The hope is that we also win the team championship, which we didn't in the first race day. Also that we win all 3 races in terms of like first place. The team put a lot of time into improving the agents, so we were nervous. The first 2 races go very well, and we are essentially dominating the race, taking first and second place, and that kind of gives some confidence going into the last race. And then there's this moment at the start of the 3rd race where there's a wipeout of one of our SOPHY agents. But then what makes me very hopeful is that actually we're catching up and we're still in the game. And that agent actually goes to win the race. SOPHY won all qualifying. It won first and second place in all 3 races. It recorded the best lap time in all 3 races and won the team score by double points versus the humans.
もちろんその勝ち負けもあるんですけれども、それ以上に重要なのはやっぱり、僕らが作っているこのグランツーリスモソフィーっていう、AI は最終的に人を楽しませるエンターテインすることを目的に作っているので、今日集まってくれた、選手たちが楽しかったね今日のレースはっていうふうに言ってもらえるようなね。
AI は多分もうプレイヤーの相棒になるんじゃないかなというふうに思っていて。その相棒になった時になんか人間の感情を揺さぶってくれるようなすごいいい関係であってほしいなというふうに思います。
本当にすごいアグレッシブで、これからもっと一緒にレースをしていきたいなっていうふうに思いましたね。
AI から学ぶものっていうのが非常に多かったなっていう、その速く走るために僕たちが考えもしないような走らせ方、確かに操作を見てみるとすごい理にかなっていて。
Why are we building this GT SOPHY agent? The hope is really that we deploy these agents in the future to other games and thereby help those players also to explore the games in a much more richer and more exciting way than they were able to do before.
So this is not just a technical breakthrough project. It really is about bringing AI into the hands of the game developers who are creators, who are going to build the new experiences for the players. And expanding their community and the engagement to the game itself.
その AI が人間に勝ちたいから、開発しているわけではなくて、AI を研究することは最終的に人間のことを理解することにつながるわけですよね。人間とは何かっていうことを考えることにつながる。僕らの好奇心というのは主にそこでしたね。
This is the very first challenge that Sony AI made. Most important thing is what you learn from the Grand Challenge and then take that into the real world.
In the beginning of 2020, I moved to Tokyo in Japan for a very exciting internship opportunity with Sony.
Florian started working just beside me.
The goal of this internship was to train an AI to race around the Gran Turismo track faster than any human.
But suddenly the COVID pandemic happens.
I had to take all of my PlayStations home to my tiny apartment. In order to train the AI, I had to run multiple simulations of Gran Turismo Sport distributed over 9 PlayStations. To make sure that my experiments got done in time, I was at least every hour checking if they're still on and still running. The PlayStations were running 24/7. They generated a lot of heat, they generated a lot of noise. I initially didn't worry that much about the electricity bill because this was all done by Sony.
HR sent me an email. The electricity bill goes up 6-fold.
What is this intern doing in his apartment? What kind of strange things went on there?
So my name is Michael Spranger. I am the COO of Sony AI. We started Sony AI to unleash human imagination and creativity with new AI technology. We are really focusing on AI as a tool, on the interaction between technology and humans, and that can be creators or gamers or people that are using the technology. It was important to build a global organization. We have offices in Tokyo, in Zurich, and a remote workforce in North America. One of the key goals of the organization is to build an environment, an organization that's ambitious, because smart people want to work on interesting and amazing projects.
Being global allows us to choose the best talent from anywhere in the world.
We were already designed to be a remote lab from the start. That wasn't something we chose to do because of COVID. So on that front, we were pretty well prepared. We already all use Zoom for everything.
So Kenta Kawamoto-san started this as an under-the-desk kind of project, essentially by himself and with a few interns, building racing agents for Gran Turismo. And I was always wondering whether we could scale that project. Could we build an AI that is able to beat the best Gran Turismo drivers in the world?
And then in the fall of 2020, we really kicked off the project in a serious way.
Florian's experiments set the foundation for the work that we did. So in March 2021, we set ourselves the deadline of trying to beat the world's best Gran Turismo racers.
I saw their milestones for reaching this goal of beating the best human drivers in a direct head-to-head comparison, and I thought they were way too ambitious.
What is intelligence? I want to create a system that is intelligent, like a human.
Kenta is a really thoughtful AI researcher, and he was the crucial bridge to the makers of Gran Turismo, Polyphony Digital.
Polyphony Digital is a game developing studio, and their product is called Gran Turismo franchise. And it's a racing simulation. Yamauchi-san's vision is very big.
それはどんなゲームだったかというと、やっぱりリアルな自動車のフィジックスを完全に再現したものだったんですね。
The car dynamics is super realistic, so it's very hard to even stay on the course.
You're just going a little too fast to spin out. It's really quite hard to be at that perfect level of control.
The professionals, the people who are really good at this game, are bona fide experts at a very difficult task.
Peter Stone is one of the most prominent reinforcement learning researchers on the planet, basically. And for us, it was very, very important to have that senior leadership in the team to be able to really drive the cutting edge.
We trained SOPHY through trial and error by running the agent over many, many trials. At the beginning, behaving sort of randomly. When should it accelerate? When should it brake?
First of all, you need to learn to drive in the right direction. Then you need to learn to avoid walls, not to go on the grass, for instance, because that's going to slow you down.
Essentially the same way you might train your dog a new trick, by giving it rewards and encouraging it to do the right thing more and more often, it eventually learns how to perform a complex task.
And so we create the framework to allow the agent to teach itself.
We don't want to just mimic the decisions other people made, right? We don't want to just mimic the best drivers. We wanted to go further, right? We want to be able to beat the best drivers.
We're not directly training GT SOPHY. GT SOPHY is training itself.
The more we learned about what it took to be a good race car driver, the more challenging and interesting the project became. What I thought at the beginning was driving really fast around the racetrack was something AI would be good at because it's kind of an optimization problem. How do we just get a little faster all the time? But dealing with the other cars and the potential things that other human drivers might do that might be unexpected, that was a much bigger challenge and quite an interesting one.
Pete Woman has had an amazing career in terms of the companies that he's built and the kind of technical contributions that he's made. For us in the project, he was a technical project lead, leading the team through the technical and the research decisions.
We decided to organize the teams around 4 different aspects. First, we had getting the best time trial performance we could get. That's driving alone, how fast can you get around the track? We had a second team focused on learning the skills you would need when racing against other drivers, like using the slipstream to pass a car in front of you, finding alternate paths through a corner if you want to make a pass. We set up a third team that was focused on the agent's actual internal architecture and what it took to race against other opponents. And then the fourth team was focused on the rules of sportsmanship.
Like, what does it mean to race fairly? There's a sort of complicated and intricate interaction. It's maybe a little bit like a dance.
Our initial approach was, let's get GT SOPHY to drive faster than the fastest human when it's just by itself. And that was more of a sanity check for us.
We started out just trying to race against the built-in AI in the game, which was a challenge for a long time, but eventually we got really good at that.
I think one of the greatest challenges was that we had no way to evaluate how GT SOPHY would race against human drivers. Human drivers behave a little differently than the agent, so there was a lot of uncertainty about what would happen when we actually put the agent on the course with humans.
Things kind of went a little awry from the start.
It's lights out and we are underway.
Literally, the start.
Come down towards the first corner. It's the top 3 GT Pro drivers who have the advantage.
It's very stressful to watch the agent in an actual competition because it's moments away from a massive accident.
We knew something was wrong.
I wanted to leave and not talk to anybody.
This problem is much harder than we thought.
One of the problems was that we didn't have much experience with playing Gran Turismo ourselves. So a colleague from PlayStation marketing started talking to us and I was like, hey, I know this guy.
We worked with a retired GT driver in Zurich, Tim, and he was really instrumental in teaching us about the details and nuances of race car driving.
So when I first said to Tim this goal of beating the best human drivers in a direct head-to-head comparison,
good luck with that. That was the first thing I thought.
So I remember the first test that we did with Tim during the time at Sony AI. Tim was just aggressively pushed off the track. And at first he was amused, but over time he got quite frustrated.
It was very wobbling. They just went from side to side all the time with the car. It wasn't really that good, but it was very fast.
We know what it means to drive fast.
But the whole overtaking challenge is so much more difficult than just driving on the track by itself.
He gave us all these ideas with regard to what are the kinds of skills that you want GT SOPHY to learn about.
If you're going to go and try to race the best in the world at Gran Turismo, you really can't do it with just 2 PlayStations lying around and a laptop. You're going to need some serious compute. You're going to need a lot of PlayStations to try a lot of things.
I just like building things. I like making things work. I like making things efficient. I like making things better. Florian had the rack of PlayStation and had done all the training locally with one computer there. But in order to scale this up, you couldn't have everything on one machine.
He had about 10 PlayStations or so, but he could only use like 4 at a time. I remember spending a month writing some hastily written code to split these GPUs on this machine so that we could run 12 or 16 experiments. A couple of months later, we got like another new GPU machine added to our cluster. We managed to get up to like 30 experiments or so.
One of the great things about Sony is we have the opportunity to build these kind of gaming AI technologies at scale.
Sony Interactive Entertainment has many PlayStations that they're running in the cloud.
All of those cloud PlayStations are intended for users, but the users aren't using them all the time. So going from 40 PlayStations to thousands meant that you could train GT SOPHY to not just get around the track, but to race around the track at good speed in a day.
So you can run many different games at the same time in parallel.
Damn.
So we were able to train GT SOPHY to compete with the best racers really quickly.
Wow.
So we do these races with Tim, where we have one GT SOPHY in front for him to catch, and one behind him in kind of the vain hope that we might one day catch him. And early on, GT SOPHY was no match. And he would even sometimes catch a GT SOPHY that was started way out front. We took all those lessons to heart. We built new training scenarios. We made architecture modifications. And then one day, Tim was really hyper-focused on the GT SOPHY version in front. But we saw in the rearview mirror of Tim, the other GT SOPHY agents start to come up on him. And then it made this flash of a pass, and Tim said, "What was that?" And that was a big moment for us because we had finally made a real pass against a truly skillful human.
It was just mind-blowing.
Wow.
The most stressful thing in the project was definitely the July exhibition.
We were very nervous because just a week before the event, we were told that GT SOPHY is very aggressive.
They told us if we raced them, they'd get black carded.
You'd be like flagged out of the race. Sportsmanship is very hard because the rules of racing aren't written down in like clear, easy to define rules.
In real racing, you have to have some level of etiquette and rules to make sure no one's going to do anything that puts anyone's life at undue risk. And so in the video game, they're trying to capture the full racing experience of what it's like. And that means not driving people off the road.
Often those rules are not like exactly specified.
So getting the AI to drive in a sporting way, to be polite, respect other people while also being competitive is very challenging.
So we worked very hard on modifying this reward function and lowering down the thresholds.
So that was 1 week before the actual event. That was kind of horrifying.
Hello everyone, my name is Sasha. Today I'm at the Polyphony Digital Studio, the renowned makers of the PlayStation game titled Gran Turismo. Soon there will be a historic race between an AI agent developed by Sony AI and GT top drivers, including the current world champion.
The exhibitions were set up to be 4v4, so there were 4 humans against 4 AIs, and we interleaved the humans and the AIs, and then we did 3 track combinations.
After each race, you look at all the positions that the cars have taken. Every position has a point associated with it, and you tally points.
And then the last track start was worth double points.
There were 5 of us who lived in the Boston area at the time of the July race. Then we gathered that evening to watch the race live from my living room sofa.
I was in the Sony AI office in Zurich, so we were essentially on a Zoom call with the team. I would say I was confident that we would pose a challenge.
We were faster by ourselves, and that proved itself out in the qualifying laps, which we were always running faster than the humans.
We would definitely not make it easy for them.
So Race Together 2021 is underway. It's SOPHY Bordeaux that leads the field over the timeline.
Every time GT Sony would come very close to opponent, I was like, okay, don't crash into it now.
It's very stressful to watch the agent just drive in an actual competition because it's moments away from, a massive accident.
Things kind of went a little awry from the start, I would say. Literally, the start of the Seaside race.
Three down the inside of Yamanaka, not quite through there. So now there is a big split between the top AI, which is SOPHY Bordeaux, and our top Gran Turismo drivers in second down to 5th place, respectively.
They knew our cars were really fast, but what the human players had learned to do really well is they were able to hold their positions.
And it's a very short race, and so once we had fallen behind, there wasn't much time to catch up.
The first GT SOPHY car ran away and won the race, but we didn't feel all that good about that because the humans finished 2, 3, 4, and 5, and our cars were never really in the mix with them.
23 points to our pro GT drivers, 16 points for GT SOPHY, of course, as a result of those finishing positions.
We had a tough time in race 1. There was like a quick huddle in a conference call. We were also looking at each other trying to figure out, all right, let's see what we can do for the next race.
And we did make some changes.
If it works out well, it's a nice story, but if it doesn't work out well, you're going to kick yourself when it actually goes bad.
Race 2 then is underway for Race Together 2020.
And the second race went quite well. It was very exciting. It was wheel to wheel the whole time, and we thought it turned into a great race.
At Maggiore, we actually took the first 2 positions and wrestled back the points lead. Maybe we've got it.
It's all up to the race 3.
So start is the most complicated out of these races, and it also has 7 laps instead of 4 and 6 laps that the other 2 tracks have.
The last race was double the points, so we still had a chance to come back.
Qualifying once again, Sophie Orange, who qualified on pole position from Takuma Miyazono then, so it is the GT.
For the final race, we had the qualifying round first. We were ahead of them by about 1.4 seconds, which is a good sign for us.
It's lights out and we are underway. Orange gets away well from Miyazono, not a bad start there to come down towards the first corner.
Essentially, our car started 1 and 3, but by the time the first turn is done, 3 human drivers have taken the top 3 positions.
GT Pro drivers who have the advantage in the early stages.
You could see everyone's face change because now it means we have to catch up with these really good players.
So we figured it'll take 1 lap to catch back up, and then we'll be in the race again, and we'll get back into second place.
But what we noticed was that our cars weren't able to catch up.
Even though GT SOPHY was faster, it wasn't able to actually close the distance. And then finally, after GT SOPHY car caught Yamanaka and passed him, he passed it right back right away.
What a move then from Tomoaki Yamanaka to get second place back. Absolutely phenomenal stuff. It's a Japanese 1-2 with Yamanaka getting second place in the final stages of that race. What a phenomenal end.
I wanted to go hide myself. I feel like I wanted to press leave on the Zoom call and I wanted to go into a room and, not talk to anybody.
We were expecting GT SOPHY to win, but the human players were better than I expected.
What was amazing was that we said, okay, is everyone on board with making it better? And everyone was on board.
So we set a rematch target of the end of October.
It felt like we had enough time to identify the problems, but it was certainly going to be a race against time to fix them. That third race race at Sartre was the big hang-up once again. Our car, SOPHY Orange, went off the track.
From pole position to last place, Sophie Orange.
It was like, oh no.
There is such a thin line between making it and not making it.
And then GT SOPHY hit the gas.
We were all like screaming and full of adrenaline.
It was incredible.
The second one is pretty good, but it's pretty timid out there. I'm not sure that's really what I want. A really fun part of my job is being a data detective. Going back into the data from these races and figuring out what went right and what went wrong. So 3 big problems we saw out of that July Sartre race. 1, GT SOPHY had spun out mysteriously while running by itself because it had one policy when it's running by itself and another when it was running with other cars. And what happened is the policy would switch between those 2 modes.
So what is the definition of a policy? The policy is a little bit of AI code that says what action to choose given what SOPHY sees.
And in one of those places where it switched between modes, the car basically had a hiccup and it spun off the road. So we had to become determined for the October race to make a single policy that didn't have to do those kind of artificial switches.
To have a single policy that was both faster than the humans and knew how to drive in racing scenarios.
Another big mystery coming out of the Sartre race was why we spent 6 laps out of contention not running up with the leaders when we had proven we could run faster than them.
We knew something was wrong there.
We went in and discovered that GT SOPHY was really good at racing right next to another car or by itself, but this idea of catching up over the course of a lap really hadn't been trained into GT SOPHY, and so we had to figure out ways to make that skill better.
And one of the big ones that we probably underestimated is this aspect of sportsmanship.
When watching the replay of that race, I noticed that GT SOPHY kind of moved over and slowed down a little bit as it let Yamanaka pass.
We had to find the right balance between staying competitive and trying to avoid the collisions, which was the greatest challenge.
What we basically did at that point is we just enumerate all the different versions of the reward function to a more reasonable behavior, and then we trained really hard to the last moment before that race.
Welcome back to Race Together 2021. This is our second event of the Gran Turismo SOPHY AI versus our GT.
We were all very tense.
We knew leading into it that we could outrace our July 2nd policies that we've trained.
But we still had to be humble. We had gotten beaten pretty bad by the humans in July.
There is such a thin line between making it and not making it.
There was still always a chance that they were going to have another trick up their sleeves.
So let's see what's going to happen then as we get Race Together 2021 underway here then. And so Bordeaux leads the field over the timing line. Into the braking zone of turn 2 we go, and it's actually Sophie Violette who goes on the outside into turn 2. Very aggressive driving then from Violette.
My only memory, of course, was how poorly we did the last time we were on this track, and after the first turn, we are in positions 1 and 2. If only I could explain how happy I was to see the race start like that.
Checkered flag flies for race 1. It's Sophie Bordeaux who wins race 1 from Sophie Violette.
We won handily, taking first and second. So we're like, okay, that's good. That's a good start. Then we get to Maggiore, the next race. That's when we did the best on before, but you know, things could change. And once again, we did really well in that race.
Comes across the line to win race 2 of Race Together.
We won the first 2 races really convincingly by taking first and second place in both races.
But Sartre is a real wild card.
The most challenging course, the one that was the most demanding in terms of skills.
So any small mistake can be a big problem.
The humans were behind, but Sartre is worth double the points.
They have a chance because they're in person, so they regroup, they're talking to each other, they're trying to see what they can do.
They can change their behavior based on how GT SOPHY behaves in the race. We can't do this.
Once we deploy our agent to race against them, it's frozen. It's not learning anymore at that moment in time. But humans are still really good at adapting in the moment to what's going on. So we're still pretty concerned about how it might go.
Lights out and we're racing. Good start there from Kikumiya Zono, SOPHY Orange.
The start there was contentious, and our car that was on the pole, SOPHY Orange, went off the track in the melee.
I was like, oh no.
And ended up being in 8th place, which was last place.
But then something amazing happened. GT SOPHY Orange actually started to catch up.
Whilst they're swabbling, look who's in the background there. Blanche and Orange ready to join the party.
GT SOPHY Orange made its way through the traffic, through all the AI cars by lap 4.
Then, interestingly, when SOPHY finally caught the leader in the July event, those same two competitors had been side by side like that, and GT SOPHY had hit the brakes. But this time, GT SOPHY hit the gas.
Side by side they run, on the inside there for Orange, and goes through into the race lead. So
And seeing that happen was incredible.
We were all like screaming and full of adrenaline.
GT SOPHY went perfectly through the turn, holding off Yamanaka and driving away to victory.
Race together. It is SOPHY Orange and the AI that wins race number 3. It is SOPHY Blanche makes it an AI 1-2. And by my calculations, given there's double points on offer, I'm fairly certain that the GT SOPHY AI are going to have won double the points there for SOPHY. Huge congratulations all round to our drivers and huge congratulations.
We won. We've actually accomplished this groundbreaking game AI development.
It was incredibly gratifying to see that our efforts paid off.
That's something we are waiting for in these 2 years. So we finally achieved the victory. So that was super awesome.
It made us so proud, made us really happy. Yeah, it was great.
The race is not the end. The next step is to actually think about how can we make use of this great agents that we have built.
We are looking at how to integrate GT SOPHY with actual releases of the game. We were able to play against the best human players in the world. That's great, but if you're not the best human player in the world, that's going to be too good for you. Like, it's not going to be fun to play against. And so thinking about how to make AIs that you actually want to play against, if it's your first time playing the game, or if you're just not that good to start with, like me.
How do we modulate the skill level so that it's just the right amount of challenging for people who are at different skill levels of the game? How can perhaps it be a teammate rather than an opponent? Identify things that people could do better and improve their performance to the large population of people who play for fun.
So at Sony AI, we think it's very important that we share the research that we do. And so to that end, we wrote up the work we had done on GT SOPHY, submitted it to one of the top academic science journals in the world called Nature, and it was accepted into Nature and was featured on the cover of it in February.
As a researcher, it's kind of like the highest achievement that you can get in the field, and honestly not something I dreamt I would be a part of at any point of time, but it's pretty nice.
The publication itself is not the achievement. The achievement is inspiring world experts to change their approach.
The drivers, they were not sad or frustrated. The AI showed them they are not at their limit yet.
やっぱりとことん速く走るためにはこういう操作が必要なんだなっていったところは毎回学ばさせてもらってますし、そういった意味で自分の定めていた限界っていうのが壊れてなんですかね、もっともう一段階上を目指せるっていうことが自分の中で認識できるんですよね。
What makes a system look intelligent or thoughtful or respectful? We can feel that kind of things, and that's a really important thing.
I think one of the unique things about GT SOPHY that's really exciting for the future is its ability to navigate the unwritten rules of sportsmanship and etiquette. There's an awful lot of unwritten rules in the world that we follow every day in different scenarios.
These unspoken, hard to codify social conventions will come up more and more as robots and autonomous agents become entities in the real world. So we need to think a lot about, how can robots be social in the real world, and GT SOPHY sportsmanship is a really nice microcosm of that.
And if we're able to start making headways on that sort of thing in AI, we can make a lot more immersive agents.
Many companies and startups are trying to use AI for automations or like saving costs and making things more efficient. But our position is the AI is for the human. The AI is to enhance the human creativity.
GT SOPHY absolutely fulfills the mission of Sony AI, but we're nowhere near done. There's so many things we want to do with this organization and really move forward and really change the world.
Our journey has not ended yet.
I can't tell if I'm excited or terrified again. Like, I got so smashed by GT SOPHY last time, so to race against her again is a bit scary, but I don't know, it's fun. I always enjoy racing against a superhuman AI.
It's really aggressive, like tends to attack you on the limit. That motivates you to push. It's a really a good reference for make yourself even faster when you don't know how much faster you can be.
GT SOPHY is an AI racing agent that can combine speed, skill, and racing etiquette to be able to compete with the best racers at GT.
そうですね、やっぱりまたソフィーとレースをしたいと思います。やっぱりその自分がこう知らない速く走れる技術っていうのをソフィーは持っているので、もっと技術を盗んでいきたいですし、そしてそのさらにソフィーとのレース、争いっていうのをもっとこう楽しめるようなレースっていうのをしていきたいなと思います。
In certain situations, I think it's possible to stay one step ahead, but in terms of pure speed, SOPHY is, I don't know, already 2 or 3 steps ahead of us.
It's always a learning experience for us, but what's also cool is that these players and racers are really good at what they do. And it's nice to see them push our car to its limits.
SOPHY's biggest strength is like being precise. It's just perfect every time. As a human, I can't do that.
If somebody drives against SOPHY long enough, they're able to see some gaps, they can exploit that behavior, and GT SOPHY will not know how to respond. So I think it'll take a very skilled racer, and I think we're giving them the opportunity. The more they race against SOPHY, they can find those gaps, and they can then take advantage.
If I should really say something to SOPHY, I will beat you.
Let's see what happens then. Here we are at the Sardinia Windmill Circuit. Race Together 2022 about to get underway. It is the GT SOPHY AI versus some of the world's best Gran Turismo 7 competitors as Valerio Gallo leads the field to the timeline. Race Together 2022 is underway, and Gallo comes over into the first corner with the lead. But how long is he going to hold on to it? Because I wonder whether Sophie Rouge in second place is going to attack. You can see the AI there using all of the circuits to try and maximise as much possible speed as they can going through. Sophie Blur there getting involved in the action. Looks like Yamanaka was coming under a bit of pressure from Sophie Blur as well. Here comes Yamanaka up the inside of Sophie Blur and going through. So the Samurai is through into 4th position then. So the AI losing out momentarily as Blur immediately gets it back through once again into P4.
Yeah, a lot of dust. Looks like Emily Jones has moved up as well. And also Rouge has just taken the lead away from Valerio Gallo. So Sophie AI already up into first, making quick work of the 2021 Nations Cup champion. Igor Fraga, the 2018 champ, now hot on the heels of Valerio Gallo. All sideways over the jumps here as we go to Sophie Blur just behind Tomoyuki Yamanaka. Yamanaka practicing against AI earlier on, had a hell of a fight with the Sophie AI. So I'm really interested to see how he does here. On board now with Violette as we are behind Emily Jones, looking for ways by the different lines and approaches here. Look at the inputs on the right-hand side of your screen as well. You can see exactly what the AI is doing at every point on the circuit. And it's just fascinating to see them discover the fastest way around this circuit.
Yeah, you'll notice the AI don't counter-steer that much compared to the real-world drivers. So, as you say, very interesting difference in driving style. So already at the start of lap 2, and look at how concertina the field up is up rather, I should say. Look at that as Emily Jones getting really sideways there, losing 1 position, losing 2 as Violette comes through and into 5th place. Yamanaka also getting ahead. So those two now now going toe-to-toe with one another. It's Yamanaka versus Violette. Fraga, meanwhile, has just got the better of Valerio Gallo. Gallo looks like he's making a mistake. The Italian down to P3, so it's three drivers running nose-tail bumper to spoiler as Violette sends it up the inside of Tomoaki Yamanaka and goes through and is now going to pick the pocket here of Gallo as well. So this is really exciting stuff as they go side by side. Gallo's got the inside line. Violette is on the outside. Just has to back out for a moment. Does Sophie Violette. Gallo holds firm in third.
Come on, Gallo, mate, it's for humanity. Never mind, they're going to Violette up the inside there with supreme confidence. All Gallo can do is watch as the Sophie AI pulls away from in front. Speaking of front, Rouge now has a 3.5 second lead over Igor Fraga and is extending. That's the battle for second right there. You can't even see Rouge anymore, just the rooster tails, the dirt being kicked up as it drives away in the distance. There is Igor Fraga in the bottom left-hand corner for speed, having to work very hard to keep Violette behind as they drift right in now. Look at the sideways all the way in, but no counter steer. The car is just perfectly balanced in the front. Brett looking at the inside now. Fraga covering it off just about, but I think it's going to be futile as Violette looks at the inside. Slides on by like Fraga is standing still.
Fraga then down into third place. Gallo's also dropped down, made a couple of mistakes behind Emily Jones, behind Sophie Blur and behind Sophie there. So Gallo from the podium positions just a lap or so ago, now down into 8th and last place in this race. Gap at the front has come down between Sophie Rouge and Sophie Violette, and this is going to be interesting as well, because of course we're talking about the AI versus real world driver battle, but I wonder what it's going to be like with an AI versus AI battle. Is Violette going to be able to get onto the back of Rouge? The gap now down to 2.7 seconds, so if we have a battle between those two, that'll get really exciting as Blur trying to have a half look there up the inside of Jones.
Yeah, well, this is a very unique experience. The commentator as Emily Jones clouts the wall and then gets clouted by Blur. AI versus humanity right here, ladies and gentlemen. It's awesome to watch the AI adapt, and Emily Jones doing a good job there in 5th place, keeping Blur and Ver behind as well. Gallo, though, down in 8th place. He's not having a good time. Our 2021 champ, but unfortunately not able to do much today. But onto the final lap now. Rouge leading from Violette, and Violette is actually gaining. 1.5 seconds now is the gap between the two leading AIs. Igor Fraga just about holding on to third from Tomoaki Yamanaka, who's behind. Then behind them is Blur and Gallo.
So then, on the final lap, we are Emily Jones sitting there in 5th place at the moment. The difference in lap times you can see on your screen, and you can see that Violette was quite significantly faster, about 1.2 seconds quicker than Sophie Rouge last time around. So two AI drivers battling amongst one another, and this is getting pretty spicy for the lead.
That best lap by Violette was 2.1 seconds faster.
Sorry, apologies.
Yeah, than any of the other drivers out there, the real drivers. That is insane. These guys, you know, that's a lot of time for these guys. That's an absolute marathon for these guys in the GT World Series here. So meanwhile, it's Rouge versus Violette, and the gap's come right down now. It's 4/10, so AI versus AI for the last few corners.
This is going to get really exciting then. Violette versus Rouge. How is this going to work out then? So it's Sophie Rouge ahead of Violette as they come to the timing line. I think Rouge is just going to hold on. The checkered flag is out, and Sophie Rouge takes the win at Sardinia Windmills from Sophie Violette. Igor Fraga, the first of our GT World Series drivers, comes home on the podium ahead of Yamanaka, Emily Jones, Sophie Blur, Sophie Ver, and Valerio Gallo completing the 8th driver strong grid.
I think the most obvious strength from Sophie is the consistency and also how precise they can do the input. It's not like human that sometimes we want to do the 50% on the brake, and sometimes, you know, it goes a little bit more, a little bit less, or, you know, stuff like that, and Sophie doesn't have it.
She recognizes your moves. Let's say if you defend the inside, she would attack you at the last moment when you don't expect it, because maybe I'm thinking she will not attack you. So it's like mind games. And also the defense, because she's gonna really defend you and break your slipstream. And actually slipstream is another thing that it's really important to follow during the races. So she's reactive in this way.
ソフィーに教わったことはやっぱりこう速く走るためのその技術、例えばステアリングを切る操作、アクセルの踏み方、ブレーキの踏み方、すべてを教わりました。
I think there's already some stuff I've learned from watching Sophie today, like how much throttle and how much brake she's using, and it's interesting because she doesn't use like very much brake. It's only under 50%, which is I wasn't expecting.
Race 2 then for Race Together 2022 is about to get underway. Here are the drivers line up on the grid here at the Lago Maggiore circuit. An Italian track and fitting that the 2021 Nations Cup champion is on pole position with Sophie Rouge alongside him for company. Row 2, Igor Fraga, the Brazilian driver. And he has got Sophie Blur on the second row of the grid alongside Tomoaki Yamanaka. Japanese driver. Can he repeat his fortunes of race 1 with Sophie Verb alongside? Final row of the grid, Emily Jones in P7. And then Sophie Violette completing the 8-driver strong grid. Well, let's see what happens then as we get ready to go racing. Second race for Race Together 2022 at the Autodrome Lago Maggiore is underway as Gallo leads the field, and you can see the AI immediately darting into the slipstream. It's a 90-degree left-hander for turn 1. Are we going to see any moves being made into there? I think there might be a bit of a day late in the dollar short. Sophie Rouge runs a bit wide. Igor Fraga sees there's an opportunity, tries to go for the outside line. That turns into contact. Sophie Blur's on the inside. We're 4 wide on the exit of the corner here as Yamanaka goes and picks the pocket of them all and goes through into second place. Great driving from Tomoaki Yamanaka as he goes up from the outside the top 5 into second place, and now we're side by side with Sophie Blur on the curve and losing it round with contact there. Fraga connects Blur and Blur is off and into the wall. So big drama on the opening lap.
Sophie there, not accustomed to how they race here in the GT World Series. That's great to see that action at the start there. And Yamanaka really making the best of all it up to P2 there. Also, Emily Jones getting up to P5 from 7th on the grid. But you see already Sophie Rouge sliding that AMD through and already right on the back of Yamanaka. It's there. Oh, off they go to the wall. Was that contact? We just saw the end of that there. So they're in the wall as well. So far, a very poor showing for the Sophie AI. 6th, 7th and 8th and 3rd right now. Rouge is holding the baton for Sophie AI. As it looks around the outside of Yamanaka. Yamanaka is too clever to let that happen, and for now stays in 3rd place.
Well, this has allowed Valerio Gallo to pull out an advantage of 1.7 seconds already at the end of this first lap. And Sophie Rouge really looking aggressive on the back of Tomoaki Yamanaka then as we come through into the final sector. Don't think that Rouge will be close enough to mount an attack on the Japanese driver as it stands for now, but if they can get a good exit out of the final corner, maybe that will allow an opportunity down in towards T1 here.
Really interesting to see the different lines that AI has taken compared to Yamanaka in front there, and getting the car almost sideways on purpose to turn the car, rotating the car on the slide into the last corner. That is insane. You will never see any of our guys trying that, so it just shows you the control that the Sophie Rouge has in that AMG. It's insane to watch, and even harder to try and get my brain around. Now, are they going to try and go for a move here on Yamanaka? Of course, the same is true for 2 people fighting, even AI and a person fighting. If you're fighting, you're slowing each other up. Fraga there in the background looking to try and make up some places after a poor start.
So then, the good thing is here for Igor Fraga that it's just going to allow him a little bit of an opportunity. He's going to see these 2 squabbling in front. If they start squabbling corner by corner, that will allow Fraga to just close up a little bit more than he's able to do. Rouge really late onto the brakes. Was there just the slightest touch into the back of Tomoaki Yamanaka? We're coming through into the middle sector. Yamanaka knows that, going for a bit of a defensive line as they flick it over into the left. Goes back to the normal racing line as he is entitled to do. Don't think we're going to see Rouge making any moves at the moment through these corners because it's very much one at a time through here, but maybe he can try and force Yamanaka into a mistake. There's a long straight here. Rouge has got a good run out. Yamanaka knows that, tries to defend that position. Slipstream though is effective here for Sophie Rouge as they come down the hill in towards the right-hander. Who's going to brake latest? Yamanaka's late on the brakes, but Rouge is trying to go round the outside as they come through the right-hander, and Yamanaka does hold firm for P2.
And they're going to make that one work around the outside there. The inside line really is away, but look at the different line through here. Yamanaka goes in wide. Rouge takes the grass on the inside, slides the car, and then is right back on the rear wing of Yamanaka in front, diving down the inside now. Oh, a little bit of contact there with Yamanaka, but Rouge up into 2nd place there. But the door was open and Rouge went for it. That's a proper online manoeuvre if I've ever seen one.
Well, there's 2 laps left of this race. The question remains is, has now Rouge got the pace to try and close up the gap of 2.2 seconds to race leader Valerio Gallo? Clear air is really important, and you can see the AI there, the GT Sophie system, really maximising the track as much as they possibly can. Unfortunately for them, it is, as you said earlier on, Jimmy, just unfortunately Rouge that's carrying the baton for GT Sophie at the moment, because the rest of them are down the last 3 positions. Let's have another look at the replay then here. So you can see Rouge late on the brakes, a dive bomb down the inside. There was a gap there, entitled to do that. Yamanaka has to relinquish 2nd place.
It makes me proud to see the AI dive bombing like a pro, like a pro. But you say the Rouge is holding the baton, but yeah, that's it, catching the back of the field now on the back of Emily Jones. Again, we really have to reiterate that these are all playing by the same physics set. I mean, it's very easy to make AI quick by just turning up the grip or turning up the power. They have exactly the same machinery, exactly the same controls as our human players, but of course they've had thousands of hours to learn the exact right way around. So basically, in the head of the SOPHY AIs, was that faster? Was that legal? Yes, okay, I'll do that again. And if it isn't, they give a sort of a virtual slap on the wrist and get told not to do it again. And through thousands of hours of learning, this is the result.
Yeah, it's an incredible machine learning system here. You can see that is going to be put to effect here with Violette going towards the outside of Emily Jones as they go side by side down into the hairpin there. Jones knows that really cuts the nose off. It's a bit aggressive there from Jones. I wonder if that's going to cost her a bit of time on the exit of the corner as Violette was just able to get the middle of that hairpin a little bit tidier through there, but Jones knows that Violette is going to come, and I don't know whether she is going to have anything in her pocket to be able to defend. This is where we saw Rouge going for a dive bomb move. Violette thinks for the rocket on this occasion.
Yeah, I think thankfully for Emily, I think the move is coming though, and it's going to be a lunge when we see it. At the front of the field as well, Gallo is being closed up on by SOPHY Rouge behind, so we're going to have a fight for the lead in the last lap, I think, as well. But meanwhile, Jones and Violette still squabbling going into the last corner. We see Violette there just trying sort of different ways to get the car loose almost to help turn it. It's really interesting to watch what the AI is trying to do to rotate that car. So coming on to final lap now, Emily Jones just about leading from Violette as we go into the first corner for the last time. Violette's just alongside the inside. No, oh, sideways there as they all try and get by. Here comes Sophie Blur in there as well now. So now Emily Jones has two of a SOPHY AI to contend with.
That's the problem when Ilk Constantine is up in those slower corners. You can see exactly what happens, and Violette does manage to eventually get ahead of Emily Jones, who now drops behind Sophie Blur to compound her woes there as well. The gap between the top two is now down to under a second for the first time since the start of this race, and it is Valerio Gallo, the man who is very much under pressure, and you can see there between the two of them that it's going to be really interesting when they come through this first sector to see what the sector times are between them, what the gap difference is, but visually we can see it is definitely coming down.
Yeah, I mean this Valerio Gallo, just to remind you, is the 2021 Nations Cup champion. He is one of the fastest Gran Turismo drivers in the world, and right now through Sector 2, Sophie Rouge is 8 tenths faster and closing. We're into the last sector of the lap now. 6 tenths difference. Look on the brakes there, the absolute difference in ability to get the car slow down and turn there. And that is unreal, and Gallo really has to be careful now for these last few corners.
Yeah, he's really going to have to be watching his mirrors, as you say there, Jimmy, and coming through there, you can see the commitment of Sophie Rouge, but is an opportunity going to be presenting itself really over the curve as they close up on the brakes. They're running bumper to spoiler as they come through into the final series of corners, and if Sophie Rouge is going to do it, I think it might be a bit of a dive bomb up the inside through the last corner, because I don't know if a run to the line is going to be a possibility. Gallo knows that, goes for the defensive line, and Sophie Rouge tries to get the long way around the outside here at Lago Maggiore, and it's going to be a run then to the line, and I think Gallo is just about going to hold on. He does. Valerio Gallo wins here at Lago Maggiore in Race Together 2022 ahead of Sophie Rouge and Tomoaki Yamanaka on the podium. Gallo does a brilliant job there to get one over on the GT SOPHY AI. What a result, what a drive.
GT SOPHY has a great potential. I think the AI is already too quick, but still have to work on a little bit on, you know, like managing tire wear strategy and stuff like that. But once it's done like that, I mean, it's gonna be crazy.
いやソフィーとのレースっていうのはその AI 機械と戦っているっていうよりも人間と戦っているっていう感覚になっているので普段ライバルたちとレースをするのと同じ感覚でレースをしています。
I think our vision has always been to try to get SOPHY to enhance the human experience, and by having an AI agent that can drive as well as the car does, we're trying to give an experience to people who want to improve their skill, who want to have more fun, ideally a combination of both, and that's what we're aiming for.